The man who invented an engine that can run on water says he's been offered $1 billion in cash by oil-producing countries to sell his patent. So far, he hasn't sold.
Meyer started working on this project 4 years ago. He's not a scientist. He isn't even a chemist. In fact, he never graduated from college. Myers was determined, he says, to design something to protect this country from oil embargoes.
And we have calculated that if we take the dune buggy from Los Angeles to New York, we would roughly use 22 gallons of water.
The Pentagon flew a lieutenant colonel in last week to look at Meyer's invention. There's talk of possibly using it in the Star Wars defense program and to run Army tanks. Myers is currently perfecting a water fuel cell for cars. It will cost about $1,500. He says it won't need any maintenance and you won't have to replace it.
Myers has developed what is called the water fuel cell injector. The injector breaks down the water molecule into hydrogen and oxygen, and the hydrogen is what powers the car.
Basically, all we do is replace the spark plug and replace it with the water fuel cell injectors you see right here. We simply feed ordinary non-processed water or processed water in here, and as the water goes into the injector, it hits a very high pulse voltage frequency, which instantly converts it into thermal explosive energy, and as a result we can run this car down the road on water.
Myers' invention was introduced in Britain earlier this month, and now the Brits have followed him here.
That we recently took a scientific delegation to witness Stan's work, to really evaluate it, and came back saying this is one of the most important inventions of the century.
There is nothing startling about a machine that can extract the hydrogen from water. What is highly unusual is that it should do so with ordinary tap water. The conventional method is called electrolysis. Meyer has turned that process on its head. Unlike electrolysis, his device doesn't use up large amounts of electric current, nor does it produce an enormous amount of waste heat. For 20 years, he has been refining a method to fracture water, which produces vast amounts of hydrogen on demand. This is not his latest apparatus. He was unwilling to let us point a camera at that. This is the simple device he used to convince a reluctant patent office that his revolutionary concept actually works. Alloy rods, acting as electrodes, are housed in a perspex container that's filled with water. Normal mains voltage is fed in through a transformer, but critically, there is virtually no current consumed, less than half an amp. The result is dramatic. Hydrogen pours off with the flick of a switch. Meyer claims the key is his electronics, which pulses electricity rapidly across the rods at up to 20,000 cycles per second. In a way that's not readily apparent, this process transforms the equation. Whereas in conventional electrolysis, 3 times as much energy is consumed as is produced in the form of hydrogen fuel, in Meyer's apparatus, the reverse is true. It appears to produce several 100% more energy than it consumes.
So now we go down to the atomic destabilization of the water molecule. Einstein basically said if you knew how to get in to water, a gallon of water, if you could tap into this energy source, you could take a train and around a 1,000-car train around the Earth many, many times. There's an enormous amount of energy in a gallon of water, and if you look at the Equinox tape, you'll see where they talk about that 1 glass of water has enough energy that you could literally vaporize all the oceans of the world. We started to embark on this technology, and so therefore we now developed the electron extraction circuit that not only do we cause the electrical polarization process, and as we pluck the electrons off of the atoms of the water molecule, we pull the electrons out of the water, out of the resonant cavity, and therefore the byproduct is producing the electricity. So you can have self-sustained oscillation in the system. Now it became important that when we started plucking the electrons and we added laser energy, photon energy to it, we're now bringing the atoms to subcritical state, and once we bring it to subcritical state, we ignite the gases and an enormous amount of energy is released. It's called the hydrogen fracturing technology. Now to understand this, we were talking about in the conference about zero-point energy. Now basically the understanding of this is that in law of physics, the atoms reach stable state of equilibrium. The atoms in this podium here is at stable state of equilibrium. It only becomes activated if I take a match and light it and the wood starts to burn to release energy. But under the laws of physics, under stable state of equilibrium, the electron moves, and the spin velocity of the electron moves at a constant velocity. And it maintains at a constant spin velocity. But that is illogical because the electron, number one, has mass. It's 1/18, 40th the size of the nucleus. It exhibits an electrical charge. It exhibits an electromagnetic field. And it moves to an electrostatic field. And those force factors that are opposing the spinning of the orbital electron says that eventually that electron would simply slow down and attach itself to the outer walls of the nucleus. But it does not. And therefore, it becomes quite obvious that energy must come into the atom to stabilize and maintain the stable state of equilibrium of the atom. Energy must come in to the atom. Now let me kind of illustrate it in this way. The Lord says to me, we have eyes, but we do not see. We have ears, but we do not hear. What caused the formation of the energy of a hurricane or a tornado? And what causes lightning to be formed in a storm cloud? And what the Lord has shown me is this. Pose several questions. How is it that a fetus in a mother's womb can undergo atomic structuring to give us life? The mother doesn't take in enough food, nutrients, or enough solar energy to create one atomic structure. How is it that you can take a seed of a plant, put it in the ground, and grow a tree 90 foot high? That tree doesn't take in enough nutrients or photon energy from the sun to create one atomic structure. Yet the seed creates atoms, molecules, chemical processes that sustains life. Einstein said if we extend our hands in opposite directions, somewhere along the line our hands would meet. It means that our universe is circular in nature. The red effect in astronomy shows that in fact that our universe is expanding at a fantastic, alarming rate. How is mass being created in our universe? Einstein's equation of energy equals mass times the square of light showed that the potential of the light was greater than that of the third dimension. That energy is coming into our third dimension in order to create and sustain our lives as we know it. It became quite obvious then that if we would now take the atom and expose it to opposite electrical stress. Now, in the law of physics and science, we know that energy coming into our universe comes to the atomic structure. Now, we know if we hit the atom physically, you're going to release heat energy, right? Like a hammer hitting a nail. We know that Thomas Edison came along and oscillated the atom by way of current flow, and that was the invention of the light bulb. Gould came along and caused the atom to absorb photon energy and re-radiated, and that was the invention of the laser device. The precursor to that was the maser, where we had learned that we can cause the atom to absorb electromagnetic energy and re-radiate it, and that was the development of telecommunications. You know, when you're at a soccer game or a football game, and all 80,000 plus people are screaming and hollering that the guy made a goal, and you hear this trumpet, and the guy goes like that in a trumpet, but it's amplified, and you can hear that noise of the trumpet clear across that soccer field when the screaming 80,000 fans screaming and very happy that this guy had made a goal. A trumpet in a sound box is actually an amplifier demonstrating that this energy can be tapped into, and we see it, and it's around us every day. Now, for an example, at a hurricane, when the temperature varies and the heat starts to rise, it starts the vortex. As it starts the vortex, it now draws in the water moisture into the vortexing air. The air, as it's now swirling, is causing electrical charges, both positive and negative, across the outer side of the vortexing air, and those electrical charges causes the water molecule to flex, and that's what fuels the hurricane and a tornado. The reason why you have lightning form at a rain front is because when the hot air and the cold air meets together and it starts to rise, the clouds start to vortexing, they take on opposite electrical charges. It draws the water moisture in between the clouds and flexes the water molecule under particle oscillation as an energy generator by way of electrical stress, and voila, you have lightning. It's all around us. Where is the energy coming through to create the lighting that fuels the hurricane? If you have the abilities to tap into this zero-point energy, the energy coming into our universe, we have an endless, free way of having energy that can bypass the reliability on fossil fuels.
I have here the official copy of the Stanley Meyer's coroner's report. This is the findings and facts and verdict of the coroner of Franklin County in Columbus, Ohio. Rupture of cerebral artery aneurysm. He has his wife's name here, Marilyn Meyer. This was their address in Columbus at the time. Here's some things that are on this here. Circumstances surrounding death. Descendant supposedly at lunch with NATO. This really bothers me. When you write supposedly in a government document, I'm just not sure if that's professional. But if you read this statement, you can kind of tell that the coroner was already questioning whether he was actually poisoned or not, and just dismissed being poisoned as such a blatant lie and not true. I think a brain aneurysm is a very convenient way for somebody to die, and if they were poisoned, that can cause that. I know several people in the medical field, and I've talked to them about that, and they've said the same thing. Anyway, it says here, supposedly at lunch with NATO officials at a Cracker Barrel diner, the group made an opening toast with cranberry juice, immediately after which descendant ran outside, followed by his brother, then vomited violently and told his brother that he had been poisoned. He died a few minutes later. His brother sticks to that story too. They didn't find any poisons in his system, supposedly, in this report. But I don't know. I mean, come on. The guy's been working on a water car, and he dies after he's getting ready to sign the contract.